us where you were born, where it all began.
Okay, I was born outside of Boston, and that's where my whole family is, and I grew up there. And then I went to the seminary. When I graduated from Waltham High School, I went into the seminary my second year and became a study for the priesthood. And I wasn't sure I wanted to do that, but I want to give it a try, and I liked it. And so I started doing that. I was with the African Mission Fathers for 23 years. And I was there for 23 years. And then I came out and I was worked overseas in Liberia, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Haiti, El Salvador, South Central Los Angeles, because the community basically was dedicated to working with Africans and African immigrants and people of African descent. So that was our main work that we were doing. And I had incredible opportunities working in some of these countries and helping setting up refugee camps, working in Central America, working with Doctors Without Borders, accompanying children to the United States who were wounded during the battles of when the war was going on. Then working in South Central Los Angeles, it was a phenomenal community because it was predominantly African American, but there was a small pocket of folks from Mexico and Central America who were gradually moving in. This was like in the late 70s or early 80s. And to be able to, and then I was assigned to not only the African American parish, but also to the Hispanic parish. I had no Spanish. And I got there and they said to me, Saturday you'll be doing the Spanish Mass.
Oh, goodness.
I said, okay, I'm gonna need help with this. So all of a sudden, I was with a tutor, but even the day that I celebrated Mass, I didn't know what I was reading. I was even reading the directions. That's what the priest now will extend his hands over the chalice. And I'd have all these little Hispanic women looking up at me and go, what is wrong with him? You know? But it was an amazing experience. Then I came out to Minnesota for alcohol rehab. And so I was at Guest House, and Guest House was in Rochester, and it was a treatment facility for Catholic priests, seminarians, bishops, you name it, it was there. And there also was one for sisters in Michigan. And when I finished the treatment program, they said to me, we'd like you to stay close here. So would you consider working within the Diocese of Winona? So I met with the bishop and he said, yeah, I'd do that. So I was assigned to a couple of places in Rochester, and then I was named pastor of St. Charles. So I was in St. Charles there for 10 years. And I had the opportunity and was real privileged working with that community to construct a new church. Because the church was just growing and growing. And then after that, the bishop called and said, we'd like you to go to Worthington. Now, I had driven through Worthington, but it was on the highway.
Right. You'd seen it like most people do,
I know,
driving by.
yeah. It was like, okay, well, it sounds like a nice town, but nobody told me anything. So when I got here, I was shocked at the diversity that was in the community. But I was also shocked that nobody was really happy to be with one another, or so it seemed. So I finally decided, I remember one day I went into the church and I was praying, and we had adoration. I said, Lord, I don't know what to do. This is incredible. There's so much division in different ways. So the next thing I did is I met with all the leaders of all the different ethnic communities and asked, what was the greatest need that they had as communities? and every single one of them said healthcare. And they were using the emergency room as their primary care physicians. When it came time for prescriptions, they would be given prescriptions, but they would never fill them. Because this one woman said to me, "Father, how can I fill my prescription? Well, I have rent to pay, I have food to put on the table, and I have to clothe my kids." You know, and I realized what a crisis that this was. So, you know, I prayed about it some more, and the next thing I'm praying and I hear, you know, in my heart, I heard, you know, start a clinic. You know, I know nothing about a clinic. So as I'm praying, I'm saying, Lord, what's your second option? You know, I wanted something a little bit easier.
Door number two.
Yeah, right, you know. And a buddy of mine is a physician anesthesiologist over at the Mayo Clinic. So I called him up. I said, can you come up just for a weekend, just to see some people that are here? And he said, sure. So he came up. He saw 35 people in one day by himself in the basement of the rectory. We had Mary Wagner. Mary was right there right from the very beginning. And she was the nurse. And then we had interpreters here helping with the translations. And then at the end of the day, Dave came up to me and said, you know, I want to come back here. And I said, okay, let me figure out what our next move is. He said, because today reminds me of why I became a doctor. And I asked him, well, what do you mean by that? He said, one of the patients that he saw here had just crossed the desert, and her feet were all blistered and just sores all over her. And she told Dave that she didn't care how much pain she was in. She was so grateful to God for bringing her back to her family. I mean, it was unbelievable. So the next clinic we had, the next day, a couple of months later, we had another clinic, and we had more people volunteer who were physicians at the Mayo and in Sanford and also Vera. But it kept growing. Finally, Al said to me, you know, we have the chiropractic clinic. You can use that. It's not very busy on Saturdays. So we moved into the chiropractic clinic. Then it took off like gangbusters. From 30-something people we now have had with initial contacts and seeing patients in the 13 years that it's been in operation. We've seen over 3,000 patients. People who are underinsured, uninsured, they have nobody. There's different parts of it, components where we had advocacy. Kathy Close, who's an attorney, she does some of our immigration work that we do. We do a lot of advocacy work. So when a patient goes to the hospital, I'll give you an example. I went with one patient. She was dying of cancer, 30-something years old. The woman goes in and the doctor says to her, I'll give you some more medication. And Mariana was with me. And Mariana said to the doctor, is there anything more treatment that she can do? And he was a little bit embarrassed, putting his head down. She walked away and he said, I can't do anything more because she has no insurance. You know, and that's when you begin to see the real privilege. What we take so much for granted in the clinic is open not just for immigrants, refugees, and migrants. It's anybody who doesn't have insurance. Probably that was one of the greatest things that I think I've accomplished here, because we've now, in collaboration with Sanford, very close. Jen Wag, who's the CEO at Sanford, is on our board of directors. she set up a program that's been working with us for about at least 8 years, and that was the co-op. So every Wednesday, a team of 5 from Sioux Falls comes, a pharmacist. We have 2 nurses. We have physical therapists, and they come and spend the whole day looking after patients. We do a lot of telemedicine now, all kinds of things, spiritual direction. We do, counseling and everything. It's really multifaceted, and it just keeps growing and growing. And then Sanford allowed us to get the building that used to be the urologist's office. So we now have that as our new facility. And last Saturday we had it blessed by Bishop Barron. Came up and he said he was amazed. The second thing that surprised him was we are the largest parish in the whole diocese. Out of all of the Rochester parishes, everything. The largest parish in the whole diocese. We have the largest amount of people coming into the church. For the last 14 years since I've been here, we've had no less than 30 enter every Easter to become Catholic. It's unbelievable. The ministries that we have had promoted here, the racism, discrimination, and prejudice, it's there, but it's moving away. People are really, I think, beginning to grasp what the notion is when Jesus says, when I was hungry, when I was thirsty, in prison, or homeless, you were there. And our people are there. We've had incredible experiences. CNN came up and did a thing about here. We've had so many other, and they won a Peabody Award. Yeah, for that piece, People from all over the country come to interview us, to ask what we're doing that's making this so unique. So looking back over 14 years, I'm thinking, well, how did I ever do that? But obviously, it was with the community. It was like we did it. St. Mary's did it. It was a community of Worthington did it. Slowly changing, still problems, but it's not that something that's insurmountable. So that's how I wound up here.
And now that you've been here and are moving on to the next chapter, besides all the wonderful things that you've done, I'm sure the people that you've met here are family to you.
They are family. That's why I decided, when I had shared a house for 30-something years with another priest, and he died very suddenly. Now, it's an hour and 15 minutes from here. But afterwards, some of the parishioners said to me, are you going to stay here? Are you going to retire to that house? And I'm saying, yeah, of course I am. Then I'm looking at it. I'm going, are you crazy? What do I want to live in a big house by myself, in the middle of winter? And they said, all your friends are in Worthington. Just find something in Worthington. And it was no more than a day when this word of this condo came up. And it would seem like a real slow process, but eventually it just fell into place. And so that's why I stayed.
So your family is essentially here.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's talk about your family of origin. Okay. Talk about growing up in Massachusetts.
Okay.
What was your life like?
Growing up in Massachusetts, my dad was a clinical psychologist and my mom was an attorney. And wow. So, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. So I had a really pretty great growing up with my brother, my sister. I'm the oldest. Then my sister is 11 months younger. My mother refers to her as an Irish twin. Yes. And then I had a younger brother. And he died at the age of 33 on his 10th wedding anniversary. And his youngest was like 6 weeks old or something like that. And it was amazing. He had a wonderful kid, great family. My sister married a great guy. She has 2 children. Now she's a grandmother. You know, my sister-in-law just died 2 months ago, 3 months ago. And that was very sudden. You know, so I have nieces and nephews with that. And so the family is close, but everybody does their own thing. And my mother's still alive. She's 96. Yeah, as I told her, I got a condo near the golf course. She said, you know, you don't play golf. Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, Mom, unless it's got a clown's mouth and a windmill. That's the only time to golf. Yeah, that's the only time to golf. You know, and the people are saying when I'm looking at this condo, well, you can sit here on the front deck and you can watch the golfers go by. I said, I'd rather chew glass. You know, like, it's like, really? You know, so it was amazing. But I'm glad I still bought it.
Well, it's going to be a great area, and you'll have a lot to look at, whether golf or not. There's lots of people walking by, right?
I know. And when I first bought it, you know, and I wasn't telling anybody that I was buying it, but I had just put money down on it. And that night we had the Habana thing up at the with Kathy. Oh, sure. You know, All Day for Africa. And this guy came up to me and said, so, I hear you're buying a condo. What?
The joys of living in a small town.
I just went and saw the place for the first time today and put some money down. The guy already knows it. But when I first did it, it was funny because I watched people drive by and they were trying to find which one it was. That was weird. You know.
You grew up outside of Boston, is that right? So the small, I mean, maybe it was a smaller community, but the big city life, what was it like?
It was a big city life.
It was big city life. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was big city life. I lived 10 minutes from downtown Boston. 15 minutes to Harvard University. You know, the town that I grew up in was Waltham. And when they used to make the Waltham watches were really a big thing at that time. Brandeis University, Bentley University is all in the town that I grew up in. So it was pretty, you know, urban. Now, I couldn't tell you the difference between a cow and a bull growing up in Boston. I mean, we weren't a hunting family, you know, none of that, you know, so I moved out here and it's like, damn, you know, there's so much corn, you know, and beans and everything. And my parents, my dad was still alive and we were driving around. He said to me, Jim, this is unbelievable. I think there's more cows than there are people. You know, I said, well, that may be true. I'm not really sure. But I think what was amazing, the adapting to small life community. Even when I lived in Rochester, I was going to help out, say, Mass at a weekday at a parish in Stewartville. So the people said to me, you better leave early because it's rush hour traffic. So the Mass is going to be at 8 o'clock. I leave at 6:15 because it's rush hour traffic. At 6:25, I'm sitting in the parking lot of the church that I have now an hour and a half to kill.
Did they mean the Amish horse and buggy?
I know. That's when I hit St. Charles. That's when I ran into them. But it was extraordinary because I came back to the rectory and I said to the guy, I thought you said it was rush hour. He said, it is. Well, where I grew up, rush hour meant you're gridlocked. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And if you have to be someplace at 8 o'clock, you better leave like at 5 or 5:30 to get there. So the notion of rush hour, I had to really readjust my way of thinking.
Right.
Coming here, I thought it was so crazy, all these crazy yield signs all over the place. I said, why don't they just put a stop sign? Yield, it's like, okay, this is a suggestion, but
Right.
you better look both ways,
Right.
that kind of stuff. And I was shocked at the community because I only saw it from the highway.
Right.
But to see some beautiful areas, and then to see the beauty of the diversity, the people here, that was amazing.
Talk about, if you would, Father, growing up when we weren't maybe, well, in the city where you grew up, there was diversity, but where we weren't so aware of how we were
Raised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. I really grew up with extraordinary parents because my parents, from the time that we were kids, always stressed to us that the importance of whatever you do in life, do it for the service of others, or those in need, or those who are underprivileged, and really to be aware that by the grace of God, that could be you. Mm-hmm. Now, it's amazing because my brother, my sister, and I all went in to helping professions. My sister's work is she's in charge of all psychiatric hospitals with the state of Massachusetts and does all of the evaluations for making sure patients' rights and all that kind of stuff. And my brother was involved with working with special needs kids. And it was, regardless of race, creed, or color, my parents kept telling to us it was so important to include everybody. If there's somebody in the class that you're going to have a party or something, and ordinarily he's not or she's not invited, you invite them. Mm-hmm. And you make a point to go out and to be nice to them and really and figure out what you can learn from them. Right. So that was, really how we got into it, because it was by their example. My parents, as professionals, they worked at a soup kitchen for years, like 30-something years they worked in. My parents also were helped out, volunteered one night a week, living in a house for teenagers who were thrown out of their houses because they were LGBTQT community members.
What year was that?
That was probably in the 80s.
Wow.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago when you think
right.
about that.
But
I mean, it was
come a long way, but have
absolutely.
yet to come.
But when I think of my parents,
right.
Looking out and doing something like that, I mean, that was stepping real outside the box.
For sure.
Yeah.
Lots of things have changed for the better. Some, we've got a long way to go in a lot of things. What has surprised you in, maybe in the social problems of the day? What surprised you in your life that the progress that we've made in some, or lack thereof?
Well, when I first came here, I mean, first I was never told what the town was like. And I'd never told what the situation of the parish was like. And what I mean by that, it was like two parishes under one roof. Mm-hmm. And I can remember sitting at the kitchen table with Luz, and she said to me, "Father, do you think someday we could have our prayer meeting in church?" I said, "Of course you could have your prayer meeting in church." Well, they weren't allowed to. So they were in the parking lot out here. Then they were invited to go to, Living Waters Covenants, mm-hmm.
Right.
by
On the
the
lake.
nursing,
Yep.
on the lake. And they're great people, the husband and wife, who were the ministers, invited this large community, Hispanic community from St. Mary's to join their church. Because said, why would you want to stay in a church that doesn't want you? When the festivals were held, the Anglos were in the gym and the Hispanics were in my garage.
Right.
You know, and it was like, and Luz said to me, we were told that the Anglos don't want to mingle with us. And the Anglos were told that the Hispanics don't want to mingle with you, so never the twain shall meet.
Right.
And that was incredible, where it was intentional to keep the communities apart. There was separate things for everything. You know, it was duplication of parish council, finance, education, whatever it was. And it was crazy. That was very difficult to break down. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people got really angry with me when it broke down, when it was breaking down.
Change is hard for people to swallow sometimes.
And it was, and some people left the church, you know, but as I said at one homily, you know, we got great churches here in Worthington. We're not the only dog and pony show. You know, so if you find God's another place, feel free. Mm-hmm. Well, people were offended by that. When we started doing work with immigration, actually doing immigration work, as a staff, we had gone down to the border to see what the experience was of many of our people who arrived here in Worthington. Mm-hmm. And it appeared in the newspaper that our trip down there. And I'm at the gas station. I'm getting gas, and the guy says to me, excuse me, are you Father Jim? I said, yes, and he spit on me.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, so I thought, all right. You know, my first reaction, I wanted to, you know, go after him and say, but yeah, that won't look real good. Pastor of his priest bludgeons to death. You know, it's stranger in the parking lot. But then other times in church, I remember very, very clearly that after I preached, the homily was on who is my neighbor. And it was the time when Trump was telling people that all of these people were coming from Central America and they were hoodlums, they were crooks, and they were this and that. And so I said, that's not the case. Maybe there are some. But the majority are women and children fleeing violence and economic violence, their, you know, physical violence. Their countries are shattered. And a man stood up and booed me during the homily. So then I turned around to go back to the podium. I said, I'm not even going to acknowledge he did that. The guy gets into an argument with a woman who's sitting in front, and he turns around and goes, F you, out loud in church.
In church.
Mm-hmm. It was unbelievable.
Completely misses the message of.
Yeah, of what the gospel was about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Then another time a man stood in the back of the church, took my hand, and the way he took it, it was like he was really squeezing it, and said, you are a disgrace to your family and to your church. You know, and I'm thinking, I just gave you communion. You know, you don't get it. You know, Jesus said that all may be one. He's not saying just specific types of people, but all people are one. So there was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of misunderstanding. And also in regards to, I can be in your face. And I can give the message and it can be nice, but I also can be the message, it can be very strong. Mm-hmm. You know, and people weren't used to that. Mm-hmm. And I think that could have been my East Coast coming out, you know.
Right.
You know, I wasn't doing the Minnesota nice.
Right.
Because there was too much work to be done,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Right, no time for that.
Yeah,
I mean, right.
yeah.
cut
So
to the chase.
there's some people were offended by the work that I was doing, but it was also okay to be offended. You know, like I didn't mind that I would tell some people, you know, I'm sorry if I offended you, but I'm not going to change my position.
Right,
Or when we declared sanctuary,
right.
you know, as a church, and a man stood up and said to me, what am I going to tell my people at work? I said to him, well, how is that going to affect you? How is us declaring sanctuary helping a person who is greatly in need, themselves or a family? How is it going to affect you? Did I ask them to go to your house? No. You know, so it was like that kind of stuff, but he wound up leaving. And I'd hear him say, there he goes again. You know, that
So you
type.
faced hardships in this,
Oh yeah, this isn't,
in
this
your
is
priesthood.
absolutely, this is not an easy place.
No,
You
I'm
know,
sure it
it
isn't.
really isn't an easy place. But it's, if you can look beyond it, you really see the jewel that this community is and the potential for even to shine even brighter.
Absolutely. I'm sure that that's your, not the only hardship that you've faced in your life. Is there something that sticks out of something that you think, a lesson you've learned? Maybe it's professionally, maybe it's personally.
I think what I probably learned professionally was, you know, when we're in the seminary, or you're in faith formation as a kid, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, you hear about carrying your cross. Pick up your cross and follow me. Well, I thought it was a nice platitude until I wound up having to pick up my cross.
Right.
Whether it was dealing with the issue of alcoholism, whether it was dealing with the issue of arguing with people over immigration issues. It's so many, many different things. But you know, and you'd hear at Easter time different preachers talking about, well, you can't have the resurrection without Good Friday. You know, and I thought, damn, that's right.
Yes.
And so professionally and personally, those are the main things. And when you go through them, you're thinking, God, this out, you know, this is nuts. I think I chose this, you know. But then when you go through it, then you see how God worked through it. You know, what was the message that He was teaching you through that. You know, for example, even when I was dealing with alcoholism, I wound up teaching in charge of the spirituality program at Guest House. I taught for 10 years there. You know, and if somebody had told me when I came in that in a few years I would be teaching at the same place where I had gotten alcohol rehab, I'd say, you're out of your mind.
Right.
Because I'm getting out of this jitter joint as soon as I possibly can. You know what I mean? It was like, yeah, and here I am talking with the new guys, you know, who are going into primary care. You know, so like that kind of stuff, I learned that. You know, be careful what you wish for, you know?
Right. And you still do work with alcoholics.
I do.
You're still
I do.
an advocate for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, give me an alcoholic and a drug addict anytime, you know?
And that, what do you think that, you know, you talked about your folks and they were, taught you service and to treat others as you'd like to be treated, the golden rule. What do you think inside of you that, okay, let me ask you this. When you were a little boy, did you ever think, I am going to be a Catholic priest?
No, never.
What did you want to do?
Never. I wanted to become a psychologist like my dad, you know, or maybe an attorney like my mom. You know, priesthood was not even in the mix. And then I went to, and after my first year of college, They had a snowstorm and the school was closed. And I'm looking out the window. I said, what is the most bizarre thing I could do with my life? You know, and I said, oh, let me think about priesthood. That's how it started.
When you think about the work that you've done, though, you kind of have done a little psychology and a
I
little
know,
work,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. It's a little, cross mingled, with the disciplines, yeah.
Yeah.
But it really was. And it was, I entered into the seminary. Well, I entered the Society of African Missionaries because they had vocation literature and it said, become a priest pilot. And I thought, how cool is that? So the day I enter, I'm waiting for them to show me my plane.
So pilots stuck out
Yeah,
more than
the
priests.
priesthood, really. And then I found out there was only one plane for 2,500 priests. We all take turns, I mean, it was crazy, and I'd always laugh and say, God, that's false advertising. This is an 18-year-old kid saying, I want my plane. Yeah.
Um, can you touch on just a little bit, and then we'll talk about the future. Um, when you got into the priesthood, the Catholic Church was a lot different than it is now.
Yes.
Talk about the change in Catholicism through the years.
One of the things that I am so grateful for is entering into the seminary just at the end of Vatican II, and things were gradually beginning to change. One of the greatest compliments I received was from an old lady who said to me, Father, I am so grateful that you are teaching me not to fear God, but to love God. And I thought, that's extraordinary. Mm-hmm. And how many other people are sitting here who are fearing God? That was the greatest change for me personally, but I think as an institution, and we still have a long way to go in that, but we're better than what we were. It was really an amazing thing to think. And even here, I've had a couple of people say something to me, like, I can't believe how much joy I feel coming to Mass. And I don't fear God anymore. I'm not doing something I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to burn in hell for this.
Right.
And I said, seriously. She talked about during lunch, one time she ate meat on Fridays. I said, do you really think in God's mercy, He's cast people into hell on a meat wrap compared with the biggest things that are going on in the world? Right. I mean, think about it and how crazy we were even to accept some of that nonsense. And for people to feel like they can't come back to church, lightning's going to strike, whatever type, if I go back into the church. And I'm saying, why would you think like that? Because that's how I was taught. Mm-hmm. The church was sort of a reward. Going to the sacraments was a reward. Jesus never intended. If somebody came to him, he wouldn't deny them communion. He would say, here, this is my body, share it with us. I think that anybody who comes to church comes here with a very fact that they're there for a reason. Mm-hmm. And we're not to judge what that reason is. We're just here to embrace them and to love them. And know that the church is open for everyone. It should be a field hospital, as Pope Francis says. Yeah. We certainly took that to the 9th degree. Yes. But that's what I think it is, the biggest change. I don't have to fear God anymore. I know I can come to church and know that I'm loved.
Right. Well, you certainly have been a wonderful addition to this community.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you so much. In retirement, let's talk about what your plans are.
Well, I'm going to be doing some work at the clinic,
Awesome.
so I'm really excited about that, doing some counseling and some spiritual direction and doing some development work. And then I'm going to do some writing.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and then I'm going to sleep as much as I want. I don't have to scream, have Father Miguel scream at me, "You're late!"
One thing I do want to talk about, something, we share a couple of different things. We have a few things in common, but our Irish roots are one of them.
Absolutely.
Talk about that. How did that play into your life?
Alcoholism, it was really, growing up in Boston, it really was a very racially divided community. I mean, we had in the church, this town that I grew up in, we had 8 Catholic churches. We had the French, we had the German, we had the Italian, we had the Irish, you name it, we had it. Mm-hmm. And it was like at every 2 blocks, there was a Catholic church.
Right.
And so we grew up separated from one another and told we should stay within our own community. I can remember my Irish grandmother saying to myself as a kid, "Now, when you get older, don't marry an Italian, because you'll marry the whole family." Yeah, I thought, now, where did that come from? You know what I mean? But that's stuck in my head.
Right.
As a kid. Stay within your own. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of the mentality. So, yeah, defined by your ethnicity, definitely. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had the Irish dances and the whole thing.
Right.
But it was amazing community. But it was like, when I went to the priesthood, it wasn't like a going my way movie. Right. I mean, but it was pretty extraordinary.
What kind of advice would you give to someone maybe thinking about the priesthood, maybe going into service, let's say service in general,
Yep.
or just life advice, sage advice?
I would say if you think it, act on it. It doesn't mean you're going to go, if you think you might have a vocation, the most important thing is to try it out. Seminary doesn't make you automatically ordained.
Right.
You decide if you want to continue with it or not. And it's got some wonderful, wonderful opportunities for being a priest. I would encourage any young man, to if they're interested in it, even just a thing, to talk to somebody about it. And it doesn't have to be priesthood. It can be a service work, anything.
Right.
Like that, because that's what we're called to be as Christians, as people of service.
Your vocation has brought you a lot of joy in your life. What else brings you joy?
Brings me joy is when the last Mass is over on Sunday and I could turn on the football game and just watch television.
Right.
Things like that.
The simple things.
Very simple things. The joy is celebrating a baptism. I had a strange thing yesterday. A guy showed up here at the rectory, and he told me his name. 38 years ago, I married his mom and dad.
Oh my goodness.
And he always heard them talk about me, and what he was doing, he was a administrative legislator for what the heck is the name of the guy? Congressman. The guy, he just died a couple of years ago, very involved in the civil rights movement.
Wellstone?
No,
not
no,
Wellstone.
this would be...
just recently, okay.
Yeah, this would be a national...
Oh.
Anyway, but that's what he does for a living.
Okay.
But I'm thinking, this is incredible. 38 years ago, I married his parents. The last time I saw this kid, he was only like a month old. And here he is now, a grown man, and wanting to sit down and talk with me because his parents had talked so much about me growing up, with him growing up. You know, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
That was one of the rewards,
you bet.
you know, thinking you had that much of an impact.
Well, you certainly have had an impact on this faith community and the community of Worthington, and we thank you so much for doing this
Thank
for
you,
us,
Kelly.
Father.
Thank you. Yeah, this was fun.